baby. It's a test stream, y'all. See if this thing works right. Whew. Okay. That's gonna kind of get this started. So here's the thing. All I'm doing is putting it out there based on what I see, what I like, what I can understand, what I deal with. It ain't got nothing to do with nothing else but something that I truly believe in, and I need this thing to be out there. And that's why I'm putting it out there. So this is kind of how I'm feeling. This whole thing, like I understand why things are happening the way they're happening, and I don't can't really explain it all, but they do. Believe what you want to believe. If you believe in Santa Claus and the boogeyman, how come you can't believe in this? If you can believe in God or Santa Claus, or Bunny Rabbit or the Tooth Fairy, if you watch Star Wars or Star Trek, or Lost World or any of that stuff, the Jetsons, the Flintstones, all that shit matter. How come you don't believe this? Let's check it out.
Good evening, everyone, and welcome to this special interview. Today, we have the extraordinary privilege of speaking with one of the most influential and thought-provoking astrophysicists of our time, Professor Avi Loeb from Harvard University. Professor Loeb, thank you so much for joining us today. It's truly an honor to have this conversation with you. Professor, for those who may not be fully familiar with your work, you are the Frank B. Baird Jr. Professor of Science at Harvard University, the longest-serving chair of Harvard's Astronomy Department, and the founding director of Harvard's Black Hole Initiative. You've published over 1,000 scientific papers, written several best-selling books, including Extraterrestrial and Interstellar, and perhaps most notably, you've been leading the Galileo Project, a systematic scientific search for evidence of extraterrestrial technological artifacts. Your work has sparked global conversations about humanity's place in the universe. Could you briefly tell us what drives your passion for searching for evidence of extraterrestrial intelligence and why you believe this is one of the most important scientific questions of our time?
What drives me is the same curiosity I had as a child on the farm where I grew up in Israel. I would look up at the stars and wonder, are we alone? Is there anyone else out there looking back at us? This is not just an academic question, it's perhaps the most profound question humanity can ask. For decades, the search for extraterrestrial intelligence has been confined to listening for radio signals through SETI, but we've been too passive. We've been waiting for someone to send us a message, like checking our mailbox every day, hoping for a letter that never arrives. My approach is different. Let's look for physical evidence. Let's examine the objects that are actually visiting our solar system. Let's search for artifacts, for technology, for anything that doesn't fit the natural patterns we know. The Galileo project, which I founded in 2021, represents this new approach. We're not speculating or philosophizing, we're building instruments, collecting data, and following the evidence wherever it leads. We use the same rigorous scientific methods that work in every other field of astronomy. The only difference is we are willing to consider hypotheses that make some of my colleagues uncomfortable. Why is this important? Because if we find evidence of extraterrestrial technology, it would be the most significant discovery in human history. It would tell us that we are not alone, that intelligence and technology are not unique to Earth, and that there are civilizations out there that may be far more advanced than we are. This knowledge could transform humanity's future, unite us as a species, and inspire us to become a spacefaring civilization ourselves. That's worth pursuing, even if it means facing criticism from those who prefer the comfort of conventional thinking.
That's a powerful vision.
Did you hear what he said? Don't make me rewind that. Go check this joint out. This thing is crazy. Like, I know we all got our, our own lives and everything. Everybody dealing with all of the different distractions. But guys, we got to pay attention. This is science. This is real. This is not some, you know, some mess that just came out of the blue. This is scientific data that's going on right in front of our eyes, man. So where I stop at?
There's been tremendous excitement.
So
That's worth pursuing, even if it means facing criticism from those who prefer the comfort of conventional thinking.
That's a powerful vision, Professor. And speaking of unconventional thinking, there's been tremendous excitement and controversy surrounding the interstellar object designated 3I Atlas. This object has been dominating headlines and scientific discussions worldwide. So let's dive right into the heart of the matter. Professor Loeb, you have written extensively here about the interstellar object 3I Atlas, and you have pointed out several anomalies that distinguish it from ordinary comets or asteroids. Now that the object has re-emerged from behind the sun, new observations reveal a complex structure of jets that appear unusually intricate for a typical comet. Could you explain what makes 3I Atlas so scientifically interesting at this stage? What are the specific features, whether in its brightness, orbit, or fragmentation, that continue to...
she said, what is the significant features of this particular comet? This man and people like him have been paid to do just this very thing. Look for shit out of the universe. Look for stuff out there. Just show we ain't. What do you think all of this stuff has been for? All this space stuff. What do you think all that stuff has been for? Yo, guys, come on, like, pay attention. We ain't been paying attention, but just think about it. Use your own mind and just think about it.
Raise questions about its true nature. And considering the potential importance of this object, why do you think NASA has not yet released what could be the clearest image or detailed observational data available?
The series of collimated jets in post-perihelion images of 3I Atlas extend out to 1 million kilometers towards the Sun and 3 million kilometers away from the Sun. They could be generated by sunlight hitting pockets of ice on the surface of a natural object for about a month, or by thrusters on the surface of a spacecraft. In the first case, the jet speed should be at most a few hundred meters per second, whereas in the second case, it should be at least a few kilometers per second. Spectroscopic measurements of molecular or atomic lines can easily distinguish between these scenarios by measuring the Doppler velocity of these jets in the coming weeks. Science is fun because it allows us to choose the correct interpretation based on the humility to learn from evidence rather than from the arrogance of expertise.
The government is banning this $39 electric lighter next month, and this is...
Did you hear what he said, though? We gotta hear that again. Hold up.
That NASA or atomic lines can easily distinguish between these scenarios by measuring the Doppler velocity of these jets in the coming weeks. Science is fun because it allows us to choose the correct interpretation based on the humility to learn from evidence rather than from the arrogance of expertise. My assessment is that NASA did not release as of yet the high-rise images of 3I Atlas when it arrives within 29 million kilometers from Mars on the 3rd of October 2025 because of bureaucratic reasons during the US government shutdown over the past 42 days. It is interesting to note that the high-rise website here releases many new images of Mars on a daily basis, but singles out 3i Atlas by stating, any images of the interstellar comet 3i Atlas are considered NASA-wide news. Because the federal government is in shutdown, communications of NASA news have been suspended. An interesting question is, why was 3i Atlas singled out? It should have been straightforward to share data through a suitable repository with the scientific community. Science should not be held hostage by bureaucracy.
You mentioned that the 19th of December 2025 will be a critical date when 3i Atlas makes its closest approach to Earth. What specific observations are you hoping for during this close encounter? How will instruments like the Hubble and James Webb Space Telescopes contribute to our understanding, and what would definitive evidence of either a natural or technological origin look like?
The 19th of December 2025 represents a golden opportunity that we simply cannot afford to miss. When 3i Atlas passes closest to Earth, ground-based telescopes along with Hubble and Webb will have their best chance to diagnose its integrity and true nature. The key observations we need are spectroscopic measurements that can reveal the composition and velocity of the jets. If we measure outflow velocities of just a few hundred meters per second, along with the presence of water vapor and other volatile molecules, that would support a natural cometary explanation. However, if the jets show velocities of several kilometers per second with unusual chemical signatures, that would be far more consistent with technological propulsion systems. The mass loss rate is equally critical. Natural comets lose mass through sublimation, but the amount of material 3i Atlas appears to be shedding is extraordinary. If it maintains structural integrity despite such massive outgassing, or if we find that the jet velocities require far less mass loss than a natural comet would produce, then we must seriously consider alternative explanations. The beauty of science is that these observations will give us concrete data rather than speculation. We have the instruments, we have the opportunity, and we have the responsibility to look carefully and report what we find honestly.
Your ideas often challenge mainstream.
So remember, these scientists have been doing this their entire lives. So how can you believe that doctor that's told you you got 2 days to live, or that doctor that told you you gonna live forever, and you can't remember it? You can't give this man no credibility. Or men like him? Are you kidding me? Does it make sense? No, it doesn't. So I told my buddy, I had a conversation with one of my, I hear some feedback with one of my friends the other day, and I was saying I said, what do you think? What do you think? Because I'm not the one looking in that mirror at night. I'm not that one. I'm not looking at that. I'm looking at me, trying to figure out what's going on, for myself, because I can't really, what I mean? I can't really help that. So I look at this stuff and I'm looking at it for how it makes sense to me. Everything doesn't make sense to me. I'm sure like everything don't make sense to you too. I hear feedback. I'm trying to fix y'all. I'm not sure where it is. Noise block. Yeah, let's see if that works a little bit. Noise suppression. So I'm testing out this new software I'm gonna be using. And I'm still trying to figure out where that microphone is coming from. I should be able to dead joint. but I didn't. So I need some feedback from somewhere. Maybe it's here. Yep. So if it sounds a little bad, the next ones will be better. I'm building brick by brick. That's what I do. So I'm tired of waiting to. I'm tired of waiting for to get help. I'll do it myself, and I'll do my own shit, and I get it. See whoever want to come in and come along if you can, but for the most part, I'm just gonna have some fun with it because it makes me happy when I talk. Sometimes, most times, not all the time. Anyway, but getting back to this three-eye atlas, I want to see what you think based on scientific studies, based on um, spiritual analysis or whatever or religious beliefs or whatever. The same way you go looking for stuff for yourself, like when you're looking for them bags, them concert tickets, or those stocks and bonds, or those airline tickets, or those hotel rooms, or those vacation spots. You better look at some shit like this. It might make a difference. Don't kill the messenger. I'm just saying. It makes sense to me. So I figured, let me just each one teach one. You can't get them all. You get who you get. You know what I mean? So my mom is talking through me all kind of ways, and I think this has some definitely some credibility to it, guys. So I want y'all to still check it out.
Interpretations and invite lively debate within the scientific community. In the case of Three Eye Atlas, how do you respond to critics who argue that every anomaly must have a natural explanation and that invoking an artificial origin should be the very last resort? Where should science draw the line between cautious skepticism and open-minded exploration?
At Granger, we're for the ones who pay attention to every little detail, the ones who fuss, tinker, and sweat the small stuff. Because
these critics are trained on datasets of past knowledge, just like AI systems. They are used to analyzing asteroids or comets and will insist that everything entering the solar system must be asteroids or comets. This simply underscores their limited vocabulary. My advice to them is simple. Please add to your training dataset all the technological objects that humanity launched to space. Once you do that, you would not confuse the Tesla Roadster car for a near-Earth asteroid, as the Minor Planet Center did on the 2nd of January 2025.
Let me press you on the statistical arguments you've made about three.
I gotta go back because I don't know. I ain't already
rather than speculation. We have the instruments, we have the opportunity, and we have the responsibility to look carefully and report what we find honestly.
Your ideas often challenge mainstream interpretations and invite lively debate within the scientific community. In the case of Three Eye Atlas, how do you respond to critics who argue that every anomaly must have a natural explanation and that invoking an artificial origin should be the very last resort? Where should science draw the line between cautious skepticism and open-minded exploration?
These critics are trained on datasets of past knowledge, just like AI systems. They are used to analyzing asteroids or comets and will insist that everything entering the solar system must be asteroids or comets. This simply underscores their limited vocabulary. My advice to them is simple. Please add to your training dataset all the technological objects that humanity launched to space. Once you do that, you would not confuse the Tesla Roadster car for a near-Earth asteroid, as the Minor Planet Center did on the 2nd of January 2025.
Let me press you on the statistical arguments you've made about Three Eye Atlas. You've calculated that the probability of such a large object arriving on this particular trajectory is extraordinarily low, around 1 in 100 million, if it's natural. Can you walk us through this calculation and explain why size matters so much in this context?
The size anomaly is perhaps the most compelling evidence that something unusual is happening with Three Eye Atlas. Based on its brightness and the mass loss we're observing, Three Eye Atlas has a diameter of at least 5 kilometers, possibly 10 kilometers or more if it's a natural comet that survived perihelion intact. This makes it over 1,000,000 times more massive than ʻOumuamua, our first confirmed interstellar visitor. Now, here's the problem. The population of interstellar objects should follow a certain size distribution. Small objects should be vastly more numerous than large ones, just like we see in our own solar system and in debris disks around other stars. For every 10-kilometer object, there should be millions of ʻOumuamua-sized objects. Yet we discovered the giant one-third before seeing 1,000,000 smaller ones. The probability of this happening by chance is less than 1 in 1,000. Then add the trajectory. 3I Atlas is moving retrograde opposite to most objects in our solar system, yet its orbit is aligned to within 5 degrees of the ecliptic plane where the planets orbit.
Did you hear what he said? I'm gonna let that shit sink in. I think the caption said it best. Did you hear me? Hold on. Let's go. Let's do that again.
Small objects should be vastly more numerous than large ones, just like we see in our own solar system and in debris disks around other stars. For every 10-kilometer object, there should be millions of ʻOumuamua-sized objects. Yet we discovered the giant one-third before seeing 1,000,000 smaller ones. The probability of this happening by chance is less than 1 in 1,000. Then add the trajectory. 3I Atlas is moving retrograde opposite to most objects in our solar system, yet its orbit is aligned to within 5 degrees of the ecliptic plane where the planets orbit. The probability of a random interstellar object having this alignment is about 1 in 500. Multiply these probabilities together and you get odds of roughly 1 in 100 million for this to be a random natural comet from interstellar space. These aren't wild speculations. These are straightforward statistical calculations based on observed populations and orbital mechanics. When you see such improbable events, science demands that we consider alternative explanations rather than dismissing them out of hand.
Given that 1I Oumuamua, 2I Borisov, and now 3I Atlas are 3 interstellar objects we have detected in just a few years, how many others do you think are currently crossing our solar system unnoticed? Are we only beginning to uncover a much larger population of interstellar visitors? And how might upcoming instruments such as the Vera Rubin Observatory transform our understanding of what is moving through our cosmic neighborhood?
The NSF DOE Rubin Observatory started surveying the southern sky with a 3.2 gigapixel camera and is expected to discover several dozens of new interstellar objects in the coming decade. We must check if all of them are icy rocks or maybe some are tennis balls thrown by a cosmic neighbor. We need to invest in constructing a twin telescope to the Rubin Observatory that covers the northern sky. But even state-of-the-art telescopes like these are missing objects that are moving too fast at more than hundreds of kilometers per second, or small objects less than 100 meters, the size of a football field, within the Earth-Sun separation. We launched only smaller payloads in the past, and our survey telescopes cannot detect them unless they pass close to Earth.
Just days ago, Gennady Borisov, the discoverer of 2I Borisov, identified another unusual object, C2025V1, with an orbit nearly perpendicular to 3I Atlas. Is this coincidental timing, or could there be a connection between these two objects? What does this new discovery tell us about the frequency of interstellar or near-interstellar visitors?
The discovery of C2025V1 so soon after 3I Atlas's perihelion passage is intriguing, though I must be careful not to draw premature connections. C2025V1 has an orbital eccentricity very close to 1, meaning it's almost but not quite unbound from the sun. It's what we call a nearly interstellar object, most likely originating from the Oort cloud at the outskirts of our solar system rather than from interstellar space. What's fascinating is that both objects appeared around the same time, and both show unusual characteristics. C 2025 V1, like 3I Atlas, does not display a clear cometary tail. Its orbital plane is inclined 113 degrees relative to the ecliptic and is nearly perpendicular to 3I Atlas's orbit. Are these two objects related? It's possible that a small gravitational nudge from Jupiter near perihelion made what was originally a bound Oort cloud object appear slightly hyperbolic in our measurements. The important lesson here is that we're entering an era of discovery. These objects are telling us that our cosmic neighborhood is far more dynamic and populated than we previously thought. Whether they're natural or technological, whether they're connected or independent, we need to observe them carefully and let the evidence guide us.
One of the reasons your work resonates so strongly with the public is your ability to communicate science clearly and imaginatively. Yet we have seen that new ideas often face harsh backlash online, even among people who claim to support science. How do you personally balance the need to share bold hypotheses with the responsibility to avoid premature conclusions?
I do not regard myself any different.
All right. So before we get to let's ask that question. Was you want to know? Was you want to know? If you had the choice, would you want to know? If what they found was, I mean, it ain't saying that it's a bad thing or a good thing. It's just saying it's a thing and we should know about it. That's all I'm saying. So, but would you want to know? Or you think we shouldn't be privileged to that information? I'm just asking your opinion. What you think? I just want your POV, your point of view, not your opinion, just your point of view. What do you think? This is a world renowned scientists, and there's more out there like them. And we ain't the only, the USA ain't the only ones out there in space. Let's be clear, because this thing, according to these facts, it was saw, US didn't even see it. They saw it in Chile first. Chile. So yeah, don't be distracted. Don't be out there spending all your damn money. Cause guess what? This ain't no reason to do all that, y'all.
Than a typical member of the general public. I do regard myself as fortunate to get paid for maintaining my childhood curiosity. I do not subscribe to social media and do not care about how many likes I get from my colleagues. This, combined with their jealousy for the public attention that my common sense gets from the media and the public, must make some of my colleagues furious. I leave this problem to their therapists. It is common practice in science to lay out conjectures and test them by experimental data, like the work of a detective that searches for clues in order to resolve a mystery. This is what I do with respect to 3I Atlas and what I did routinely in the thousands scientific papers that I published in other fields like cosmology or black hole research, where this approach was encouraged and appreciated. For some reason, the community which studies icy rocks appears to be very conservative. I prefer not to engage in mud wrestling because it gets everyone dirty.
You've mentioned receiving hundreds of messages from people around the world, parents telling you their children are asking about 3I Atlas at dinner, asking for telescopes for Christmas. How does this public engagement change the way you think about your role as a scientist, and what responsibility do we have to inspire the next generation through our research?
The response from the public has been overwhelming and deeply moving. Just yesterday, I received a message from Charlotte Hughes in Mérida, Mexico, telling me how her son Marco rushes home from school each day asking about the latest news from 3i Atlas. He wants a telescope for Christmas now. That's not just a message to me, that's the future of science being born in a young mind. This is precisely what science should do. It should inspire wonder, curiosity, and the desire to explore. When we maintain our childhood curiosity and don't pretend to be the adults in the room who already know all the answers, we give permission to young people to ask big questions. We show them that it's okay to challenge conventional wisdom, to look at the evidence with fresh eyes, and to propose bold hypotheses. The foundation of science is humility, the willingness to learn from evidence rather than clinging to expertise and authority. When children see scientists engaged in genuine exploration, admitting uncertainty while pursuing truth, they learn that science is not about memorizing facts, but about discovery. That's worth more than any number of citations in academic journals. If 3i Atlas inspires a generation of curious minds to become scientists, then regardless of what we ultimately discover about this object, it will have served an invaluable purpose.
I think that you often emphasize that progress in science requires curiosity, courage, and willingness to challenge convention. Do you feel that today's academic and institutional climate still allows for that kind of intellectual freedom? Or is modern science becoming too cautious and too dependent on consensus and funding structures that discourage risk-taking?
The biggest damage of personal attacks against me is that they discourage fledgling scientists from thinking outside the box. They notice the scrutiny I get and do not think creatively to secure their job prospects in academia. My critics want to keep the herd in a tight configuration because they lack imagination. Unfortunately, this reduces our chances of discovering new knowledge.
Given your experiences, what structural changes would you recommend to academic institutions to better support scientists who pursue unconventional research paths? Is the current tenure and grant system adequate for the kind of high-risk, high-reward science we need?
The current system has fundamental flaws that stifle innovation. Young scientists spend their most creative years, their 20s and 30s, desperately seeking grant funding and tenure positions. They learn quickly that the safest path is to work on incremental advances in well-established fields, propose something truly novel, and you risk rejection from peer reviewers who are themselves invested in conventional approaches. I have the luxury of tenure at Harvard and can afford to pursue ideas that others consider risky or even foolish. But what about the brilliant postdoc who has a revolutionary idea but no job security? What about the assistant professor who must publish prolifically in mainstream journals to earn tenure? They cannot afford to take the risks that lead to breakthrough discoveries. We need structural reforms. Grant agencies should set aside significant funding, perhaps 20%, specifically for high-risk, unconventional research. Tenure committees should value intellectual courage and originality as much as citation counts. We should create protected positions for scientists to pursue ideas that don't fit neatly into existing paradigms. The irony is that the most important discoveries in history, quantum mechanics, relativity, plate tectonics, the Big Bang, were all revolutionary ideas that faced fierce resistance. We claim to value innovation, but our institutions are designed to reward conformity. If we want to make the next great leaps in understanding, we must restructure academia to actually support the kind of thinking we claim to celebrate.
Your expedition to retrieve fragments of the interstellar meteor known as IM-1 was a groundbreaking moment, since it may represent the first physical material from beyond our solar system ever recovered on Earth. What do you believe these findings could reveal about the composition of interstellar objects and their possible connection to technology or life beyond our planet? And in a broader sense, how does such a discovery influence the way we see humanity's place in the universe?
We have published half a dozen papers on the findings from the expedition in peer-reviewed journal. We identified a new material with a chemical composition that was never identified in the solar system before. A Netflix documentary about the expedition is scheduled to appear in 2026, where everyone can enjoy our scientific process of discovery. I still have a scar on my leg from an injury on the deck of the expedition ship Silver Star.
Let's discuss those IM-1 spherules in more detail. You discovered a unique chemical signature, high abundances of beryllium, lanthanum, and uranium, the so-called Be-La-U composition. This has never been seen before in solar system materials. What are the possible explanations for this unusual composition, and how do we distinguish between a natural planetary origin and a potentially technological one?
The Be-La-U composition is truly unprecedented. When we analyzed those 57 spherules recovered from the Pacific Ocean floor, 5 of them showed this extraordinary abundance pattern. These millimeter-sized metallic marbles formed as molten droplets when IM-1 burned through Earth's atmosphere on the 8th of January 2014. The pattern of elements we found has never been reported in scientific literature and was not present in our control samples from areas outside IM-1's trajectory. There are 2 possible explanations. The natural interpretation is that IM-1 originated from a planet with a magma ocean and an iron core. In such an environment, elements with an affinity for iron would sink toward the core, while others, including B, La, and U, would be concentrated in the planetary crust. This differentiation process could produce the unusual ratios we observed. However, there's an intriguing technological possibility that was pointed out to me by Stein Sigurdsson, the director of ArcSieve. If IM-1 was artificial, the enhanced abundance of heavy elements in Be-La-U type spherules could result from the fact that lanthanum oxide over molybdenum or tungsten sulfide substrates are promising materials for 2-dimensional semiconductors in nanotechnology fabrication. In other words,
so what in the hell did he just say? Listen, I don't know all of the chemical conversations that he has, but he breaks it down to you in layman's terms enough for us to understand that, you know what I mean? Like, something definitely is genuine about what he's saying and what they have been saying for a long time. And if you look into this thing, it ain't the first one, it's the third one. I didn't even know we had 2 before this, but that's because we all got our own shit going on. We don't know these things or be paying attention to this shit. We just keeping it pushing, Jack. And knowledge is power and information is key. So here you go. Dr. Avilo, is a whole bunch of scientists on this, and they have some other people that have other ideas contrary to him, but they can't give you another idea. What? Sit down.
this composition makes sense if you're building advanced electronics. We also discovered that some spherules have ages on the order of the universe itself, around 14 billion years, based on uranium-lead dating. This suggests they've been traveling through interstellar space for an enormous duration. The material strength of IM-1 was also remarkable. It was tougher than all 272 other meteors in NASA's Sinios catalog, and it was moving fast.
Did you hear what he said? Did you hear what he said? Okay, let's go back. Listen.
One was artificial. The enhanced abundance of heavy elements in Be-La-U type spherules could result from the fact that lanthanum oxide over molybdenum or tungsten sulfide substrates are promising materials for 2-dimensional semiconductors in nanotechnology fabrication. In other words, this composition makes sense if you're building advanced electronics. We also discovered that some spherules have ages on the order of the universe itself, around 14 billion years, based on uranium-lead dating. This suggests they've been traveling through interstellar space for an enormous duration. The material strength of IM-1 was also remarkable. It was tougher than all 272 other meteors in NASA's CNEOS catalog, and it was moving faster than 95% of stars in the solar neighborhood. The question remains open, and that's exactly how science should work. We present the evidence, we consider multiple interpretations, and we design additional observations to narrow down the possibilities. That's why we're planning a second expedition to search for larger fragments with remotely operated vehicles and real-time video feeds. If we can recover a substantial piece of IM-1 from the ocean floor, we may definitively answer whether it was natural or technological.
Retrieving sub-millimeter spherules from 2 kilometers down in the Pacific Ocean sounds nearly impossible. Can you describe the technical challenges your team faced and how you overcame them? What made you confident enough to invest $1.5 million in such a risky venture?
Here's what nobody's telling you about the new bearskin.
So let's cut that shit off until I got to pay the dues because I don't own the rights to these videos, but we can use them for informational purposes, and I want you guys to be informed. So
failure points.
I want you to remember.
This composition makes sense if you're building advanced electronics. We also discovered that some spherules have ages on the order of the universe itself, around 14 billion years, based on uranium-lead dating. This suggests they've been traveling through interstellar space for an enormous duration. The material strength of IM-1 was also remarkable. It was tougher than all 272 other meteors in NASA's CNEOS catalog, and it was moving faster than 95% of stars in the solar neighborhood. The question remains open, and that's exactly how science should work. We present the evidence, we consider multiple interpretations, and we design additional observations to narrow down the possibilities. That's why we're planning a second expedition to search for larger fragments with remotely operated vehicles and real-time video feeds. If we can recover a substantial piece of IM-1 from the ocean floor, we may definitively answer whether it was natural or technological.
Retrieving sub-millimeter spherules from 2 kilometers down in the Pacific Ocean sounds nearly impossible. Can you describe the technical challenges your team faced and how you overcame them? What made you confident enough to invest $1.5 million in such a risky venture?
The expedition was indeed extremely risky, with numerous potential failure points. We had to secure $1.5 million in funding from Charles Hoskinson, recruit qualified engineers and navigators, design and build custom machinery, keep our magnetic sled on the ocean floor against the lift from the cable, find magnetic spherules among volcanic ash, and then identify the unique IM-1 material among background contaminants. The critical technical challenge was keeping the sled on the ocean floor. The cable connecting it to our ship, the Silver Star, exerted an upward force that acted like a kite. My team members, Rob Millsap and Art Wright, mastered what I call the art of being right. They learned to read the ocean currents and minimize the vertical cable tension through careful positioning. It was a delicate balance between keeping the sled down while still being able to retrieve it. What gave me confidence? The physics. I had calculated exactly where IM-1's trajectory intersected the ocean floor based on the US Space Command's Fireball data. Smaller fragments would slow down faster due to air friction. Their larger surface area to volume ratio meant they'd land closer to the Fireball site. We designed our search pattern accordingly, and when we started finding spherules concentrated precisely along IM-1's predicted path, with compositions unlike anything in the control regions, I knew we had succeeded. The expedition demonstrated what I've always believed. When you combine solid theoretical calculations with determined experimental work and a talented team willing to take risks, you can accomplish what others consider impossible. That's the essence of exploratory science.
Looking ahead, if we do confirm that 3I Atlas or another interstellar object is technological in origin, how do you think that discovery would transform human civilization? What would change about our priorities, our scientific efforts, and our understanding of our place in the cosmos?
A confirmed detection of extraterrestrial technology would represent the most profound discovery in human history, more transformative than any scientific revelation we've ever experienced.
Pants too long? Don't pay to have them all.
A viable question because we all here together. Yeah, but we're not alone. That's the part.
Thread and your needle threader.
It would answer the age-old question, are we alone? With a definitive no. And that answer would fundamentally reshape human civilization. First, it would provide the ultimate perspective shift. All our earthly conflicts, our political divisions, our territorial disputes would be revealed as parochial squabbles on a pale blue dot. When faced with evidence that we're part of a cosmic community, humanity might finally unify around our common identity as an intelligent species capable of space exploration. Second, it would revolutionize science and technology. If we could study an interstellar spacecraft or even fragments of alien technology, the insights we'd gain could accelerate our own capabilities by centuries. Imagine understanding their propulsion systems, their material science, their energy sources. This isn't science fiction. This is practical engineering knowledge that could transform our civilization. Third, and perhaps most importantly, it would reorder our priorities. We currently spend trillions on weapons and conflicts while funding space exploration at a tiny fraction of that amount. Evidence of extraterrestrial technology would make it absurd to continue this way. It would create irresistible pressure to invest in space science, to build better telescopes, to send missions to intercept and study these objects, and to prepare humanity for eventual contact. The discovery would also humble us in a healthy way. We live in a universe that is 13.8 billion years old. If another civilization developed even a few million years before us, a blink of an eye in cosmic time, they could be technologically advanced beyond our comprehension. This would teach us modesty and inspire us to improve ourselves. This is why I pursue this research despite criticism. The stakes could not be higher. We're not just satisfying intellectual curiosity, we're potentially opening the door to humanity's cosmic future. That possibility is worth any amount of professional risk or personal criticism. The question is not whether we should look for evidence of extraterrestrial technology. The question is, how can we afford not to?
Finally, Professor, would you ever consider visiting other countries to speak about science and inspire our young people? Various countries have enormous curiosity but very limited scientific outreach, especially in astronomy and space exploration. What message would you give to students and aspiring scientists here who look up to your work and want to pursue the same kind of fearless curiosity?
I would love to visit your country and others. We are all in the same boat and we share a common destiny. My hope is that a technological visitor from interstellar space will convince us to change our priorities and invest trillions of dollars a year in space exploration rather than conflicts around the globe. My message to students and aspiring scientists is stay true to your childhood curiosity and never pretend to be the adult in the room. Life is a learning experience.
Did you hear that? Life is a learning experience, right? Listen, I can't make this shit up. I'm telling you, I believe it. I think it has some merit, and I wanted to use my influence or my sphere of influence to people that I think might have some interest in this. And if not, then it's all right. Somebody will, because it makes so much sense to me. I can't be the only one. So I'm still messing around with the I'm not even sure if you can even hear me, because I think I might have took something down, because I'm still. Oh, you know what? I can't. Oh, I think might be the monitor is off, but I'm not sure. Anyway, whatever uh technological issues happen, I will fix them, because this is like the first one I'm playing around with all of it. Like let me get this browser. You know what? I transitioned it either, did I? That's another thing I'm learning, how to transition this joint, because it should have. There you go. Let me see. Hmm. Mm-hmm. That won't go nowhere. Won't let me transition, you guys. Oh, should have done that. Fade to black. There you go. I see what I did. So yeah, I'm testing out this software I'm working on, and sometimes I don't get it all right, but it allows you to play around with stuff while you still doing uh, stuff. I guess you could say that. So I'm just playing around to see if I can get it. Yeah, like I was just playing around with that and trying to see how I duplicate the screens, or if I can swap and transition. That's what I was trying to do. But I think it's duplicating screens. But anyway, so take a look at that 3-hour atlas, man, and see what you think. Yo, like seriously, it's definitely something to think about. And I really think it has a lot of merit. So you decide, man. Everybody got to think for themselves what they believe, but I definitely think it has some merit. You let me know what you think. All right. I'll see y'all again soon.